maybe it's time to shift our attention to the NFL draft on Jet Nation Radio as Gangrene falls to 2-5 in Pittsburgh. I'm Glenn Norton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active and angry Jets message boards on the web. What can you say? Head coach Jeff Ulbrich just met with the media following the Jets' 37-15 loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nothing really to take away from it. I mean, injury wise, cover that real quick because the Jets, they got banged up today. As you know, they went into the game without DJ Reed. Elijah Vera Tucker left early with an ankle. Xavier Newman replaced him, took a shot to the head. Scary scene with him being carried off on a spine board, transported to a local hospital. Jeff Ulbrich said he is fine and will travel back home with the team tonight. So that's maybe not maybe, that is the best news tonight. And Tony Adams, hamstring, and Ashton Davis, concussion protocol. So the Jets were down to nothing in the secondary. I mean, even Sauce left for a little while with an injury. Shortly, not very long, came back. But look, it's even if the Jets had lost tonight, I picked them to win. And even if they lost, I thought, well, if it's a competitive loss and they show they can hang with a team like that on the road, the rest of the schedule is soft. And I thought they could win 6 or 7 in a row and get right back in this thing. But I don't know how you come away from tonight's performance and say they're going to go on any type of run. I think it's time to start asking how much of the problem here is Aaron Rodgers. It's a conversation people may not want to have, but a backbreaking interception. But to be fair to Rodgers, it was a fantastic play by the DB. He had his back. DB was heading toward the left sideline. Rodgers was throwing it to Garrett Wilson, who was breaking left to right. And he probably just thought he was going to sneak the ball in behind the DB, which isn't, I'm sure he's done that a million times in his career. On this particular play, the guy literally just spins around and picks it off with one hand. Total momentum shift. Instead of the Jets were up 2 with a couple minutes left before the half. If they go down, even kick a field goal and go up 5, or God forbid a touchdown and go up 9, then they're getting the ball back after the half. They're in the driver's seat, but picked off, run back to the 1, and Pittsburgh scores. Actually, no, I think it was the whichever turnover. It's 5 a.m. here. I'm a little bit out of it. I apologize. Embarrassing loss. Jeff Ulbrich says this is not us. This is not who we are. Maybe it is, Jeff. I talked earlier in the season about saying how on paper this is arguably the most talented Jets roster in my lifetime. But I also talked about how I explained to my son, my 10-year-old who's learning the game, that what you are on paper doesn't matter if you don't do it on the field. So we can talk about the talent because it's there. Wonderful. Great. You're 2-5. And you just lost 37-15. So who cares? Matthias, I'm sure the chat will be plenty fed up tonight, and rightfully so. Are we kidding? This team's an embarrassment. Clean house. The experiment is over. Possibly. Could happen. Scott, how we doing, Scott? Says, how do you stay positive about even making the playoffs? I don't know. Like I said, I honestly thought, like, if this was a 17-13, 17-14 type hard-fought loss and the Jets showed they could get some stops, I would say, yeah, they're good enough. They have the talent. The schedule coming up they're good enough to win 6 or 7 in a row. Not after tonight. You just got torched by Russell Wilson. And again, I get injuries and all that, but find a way to not give up 37 points. Beloved P says, I don't have anything left. Man, I feel you. I mean, I'm sure anyone who's been a fan of this team long enough has said that a million times over the years, but that's pretty much my mood at the moment. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, it's week 7 and season's over for all intents and purposes. I mean, hell, go prove me wrong. Win 8 in a row and make me look like an idiot. Sure, go ahead, but there's no reason to believe this team's going to the playoffs. Even 2 weeks ago, I was like, nope, I'm still there, hanging with them. Because again, believe in the talent, but the production just hasn't been there. Excuse me. Scott says Rodgers doesn't have it anymore either. That does look to be the case. So much of his production, so many of his yards have come on the short throws, or the Hail Mary last week. That's a big chunk play. But today, he threw for what did he throw for? Let's take a look. Let's creep into the box score here. He threw for 276. 90 of that was Brees Hall after the catch. Although Brees Hall did nothing on the ground, 12 for 38. He did have the touchdown early. Brees was the leading receiver, 6 catches for over 100 yards, which is pretty wild. Devontae Adams, all that talk all week about adding him and the difference, it would make having him there for Rodgers. He was invisible after the first half. I don't think he had a catch in the second half. Rodgers is washed. 77 is washed. Yeah, Tyron Smith. Honestly, I mean, I'm not disagreeing. Tyron Smith's having a terrible year. Off the top of my head, though, he had a couple of bad reps. Rodgers, there were a lot of plays where Rodgers had a lot of time. Beloved piece, where do we go from here? Play out the season. You got 10 games left. I think they'll treat it like they're still in it until they're mathematically out of it, which shouldn't take long at this rate. But it's just it's beyond frustrating. Like I said, I still put it this way: there are a bunch of guys on this roster that if you put them on the trade block tomorrow, teams would be knocking your door down. Like there's a lot of good players on this roster, but it hasn't mattered, and you see that sometimes. You see that in sports. You see a team on paper that looks dominant. Everyone agrees, tons of talent, great, has potential to be a great team, and it just doesn't work out. And for whatever reason it may be, kind of doesn't matter at this point. I think a big part of it was Salah not playing the O line early, or not at all in the preseason. Excuse me. Like I said, 5 a.m. Bear with me. Austin says can't handle the drop passes from Wilson. 2 huge drops from. I mean, that was another turning point, right? The Jets last week he drops the touchdown in a game that they, a close game that they lose. And then this week, Rodgers hits him deep down the left sideline and hits him right in the chest and bounces off and gets picked off. And that gets run back to the 1, and then they score. So they scored a couple touchdowns off of turnovers. Randy says, "What a waste of talent." Exactly, Randy. That's the point I'm making. There's talent here. You're not going to convince me that there aren't 10 or 12 players on this roster that a multitude of teams would love to have. You look at this roster a couple of years ago, there were like 2 guys. Darnold and Jamal. I think that's about it. There wasn't another guy that you could say, well, let's trade him and get something significant for him. Not the case. And I'm not saying the Jets should trade all their good players. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they have a lot of players that a lot of teams would gladly take off their hands and start them day one. Rodgers played terrible. Brees smiling after the game. This team is done. I'll tell you what, Randy, I wasn't going to bring it up because I brought it up I think yesterday, today, whenever I did the last episode I did, and I talked about Javon Kinlaw laughing it up, yucking it up on the sidelines, like moments after he got a penalty that was about to cost his team the game. And that was the first thing that popped in my head when I saw Brees. They cut to him as they're walking on the field to shake hands. Looked like he could have been happier. And I'm dead serious about this. Use it as a reminder because I said this earlier. And then today when I saw Brees as happy as could be after that loss, I just thought, I can't take this too seriously. I mean, literally, the guy's playing in the game and being paid millions of dollars. They're like, what are you going to do? Let me go find my old college teammate, do a jersey swap, take a picture, get a hug. It's if the players don't care enough to get angry, why the hell should the fans get angry? I mean, I know why we should get angry. Don't get me wrong. But I have a hard time watching them enjoy losing, knowing that the fans are agonizing over it. It's just the way it. Listen, the game, whatever the reason, I think it's because salaries have gotten so like guys are just like they just have so much money that like okay, I lost a football game, so $18 million in the bank. I'm gonna get upset because I lost a football game. And I think that's kind of what it is, and you can accept it or not be a fan anymore. And I'm not saying I don't mean that in a critical way. I mean, those are your options. Accept the fact that these guys are like, eh, or just say, well, I'm not. Well, I guess the other option, the third option, is what I'd said, right? Don't let it bother you so much. If it doesn't bother the players, why should it bother you? And I know it's easier said than done, but that's kind of where we're at. Um, we're not winning more than 7 games, says JE. Could be, man. I'm not going to argue with you. Like I said, I'm done defending them. I can, again, 37-15. There's nothing to be said. Randy says we'll beat the Pats. Jets fans will be saying we're back. Not this Jets fan. I don't care if they win that game 75-0. No. No run game. O-line sucks. Look, I've made this point a couple times. Last year, we endlessly talked about the offensive line injuries. 14 different players, 11 different lineups, or 11 different players and 14 lineups, whatever it was. And that group performed better than this one. And some of those guys played tonight. Xavier Newman played, Jake Hansen played. But it's I can't figure it out. This group is so much more talented than last year's group, but last year's group seemed to do better. At least in the run game. Pass pro was probably worse, even with Tyron Smith's struggles. Anything else from? Let me see what I only wrote down a couple of things that Jeff Ulbrich said. One, this is not who we are. I think it might be. Their team's doing what they can to create explosives. They have to be able to run the ball more. All stuff you expect. The always popular, which kind of makes me sick, is the guys we're fighting. But the one thing I will comment on about that, again, it doesn't matter because you lost the game, but there were guys. I was pretty shocked. There were dudes still fighting. Like you would have thought it was a tie game, the way some of those guys were playing on that final drive. And it was like, I mean, I guess, again, I'm not saying that makes everything okay because I hate when teams say that. It's like you're supposed to play hard. But you know what? When it's 30-15 with a minute and 20 seconds left to go in the game, a lot of guys don't play hard. But they were literally playing like they still had a chance to win. So I was like, commend them for that. They're there for whatever that's worth. They did. They genuinely, legitimately, so much so that it jumped out at me. I was like, wow, this is some pretty intense effort for a team that knows they've lost this game already. Beloved peace. Its team is soft, has no heart. I think, again, I'm not going to argue it. I think that's something we all start to say when the team sucks because you're just so angry. But I'll say I think there were some guys who did stand out tonight. I thought Will McDonald played really well. He had 1 sack and he was like a hair from a couple more. Quinnen Williams, I thought had his best game, at least when the plays that I focused on him, he looked like he was making a difference in there for a little bit. Eventually, the defense just got gassed, and that was the end of it. But this is a good point from James here because I was thinking it as I'm watching the game. Can someone on defense make a game-changing play? I'm literally watching the game. I'm like, can they get a turnover? Can you force at some point, like one? It's just if they have to be last in the NFL in turnover and fourth turnover. They have to be. I haven't looked at the rankings, but I know what they've got 2 picks, right? Unless I'm just going off the top of my head here, I might be wrong. But Eccles has 2 interceptions. I don't remember any others. Yeah, they don't force anything. Rodgers says, rid me of my 56 years of Jets demons. That's 56 is rough. I'm at 36, 37. Yeah, 37 years for me, and that I can imagine 56. They speak about every day about accountability. Where's the heart? Yeah, fair question. Fair question. Bothers fans because we put so much into it. We really do, and I'm the first one to admit too much. I'm not going to hide from that. This team takes up way too much of my time. I spend way too much time thinking about them. And when you see them laughing and smiling and joking in the middle of a loss or right after a loss, it's like, man, like didn't used to be that way. But like I said, guys, back when guys cared about this stuff and took it home with them and agonized over it, they didn't have a pile of money to go lay in after the game, and I'm not saying players shouldn't be paid well because obviously they should. The league generates $1 trillion a minute, it seems like sometimes. Pay the players, give them their money. But I think that's one of the byproducts. That's one of the things that's going to come along with it. As you give guys so much money that the game doesn't matter if you win or lose. Okay. So yeah, it's rough because fans take it way too seriously. And like I said, I'm just as guilty of it as anybody. Let's see. Nobody defended me when Woody said I have to pay a PSL for the Jets. Yeah, it's rough, Roger. I didn't have to experience that. I was fortunate in that I didn't get season tickets until I had season tickets for a year because when I lived in the New York area, I was a teenager. I didn't have a car, couldn't drive to games, didn't have the money for tickets. My parents didn't like sports. Um, but then when I moved back as an adult, I only had 2.5 years in the States. I bought season tickets for year one. By the time year two hit, we didn't know if Gino was still going to be there, and I was going to be moving back to England at some point during the season. So I was like, well, I'm not going to get them for a second year because that wouldn't make sense, which kind of sucked because I loved having season tickets. But yeah, it's Woody's got his, everyone's got their money. Woody's got his money. The players have their money, and us fans just keep paying it in. Anyway, back to the game. Back to the game here. Aaron Rodgers finished the day with 276 yards passing, one touchdown, two picks. The one pick, like I said, that bounced off of Garrett Wilson's chest wasn't on him. The second one was a hell of a play by the DB. I'm not excusing Rodgers. He's got to be better. Brees Hall, 12 carries for 38 and a touchdown. Isaiah Davis had the last play of the game, down 37-15. They gave him a handoff. One run for 12 yards. Braylon Allen, 2 for 4. Brees, as I said, led them with 6 catches for 103. Garrett Wilson had 5 for 61. Lazard, solid day for him, 4 for 58. Devontae, 3 for 30. Mike Williams had a catch, and at the time, what was at the time a big spot, 15, I think it was like 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12. And he got a 15-yarder. Conklin, 4 for 7 and a touchdown from the 1-yard line. That's why 4 catches for 7 yards. Braylon Allen had 1 for 2. Let's give some credit here. Jalen Mills. Jalen Mills played a solid game. DB filling in with all the injuries in that secondary. They needed a safety. Jalen Mills came in, led the team with 7 tackles. Javon Kinlaw had 6. Eccles had 6. Quincy had 5. Sherwood had 7, 3 solo, 4 assists. In terms of sacks, I think McDonald had the only one, if I'm not mistaken. He did 1 sack for the Jets team. But like I said, they did a decent job at times, especially Will McDonald, flushing Russell Wilson, getting him to speed up Rush's throws. Let's see what else we got in here. Engage, chat with you guys because it sucks. There's no sugarcoating it. All the high hopes. It's week 7, and we're pretty much. I mean, look, we're obviously going to talk about the team and the games, but it's time to start talking some draft on the JetNation.com, Jet Nation Live podcast Thursday nights. Me, Chris Schubert, Dylan Terman, and we love the draft. I love the draft. I think I watched about 8 games the other night. I was up, couldn't sleep, put on some all 22s, and went through about 8 games. Pulled some highlights from some players that I liked. And we'll be talking about them soon. Let's see. Someone has to put Sauce in his place. Dude is scared to make contact. There are times where he's hesitant, but that's what's going to happen when you have a rail thin corner. Corners. I feel like you see it from time to time, and there are times like if I got a 260, 270, 280 pound tight end coming at Sauce, I'm going to be like, Sauce, just get out of the way. Like I don't need you knocked out for the season. I don't need your clavicle shattered on a tackle, and then we don't have you the rest of the way. Dive at his feet, whatever. But it's I'm not excusing it. Maybe I am. Whatever, however you want to class that. I guess I'm saying I understand it. He's not gonna. I should say, I'm not gonna encourage him to miss a bunch of time. Russell Wilson plays the game with a new team, makes us look over 2-5. Yeah, yep. Let's see. Next coach needs to be established. No more hot coordinator stuff. Well, that would be good, James. But the question to that is how many established coaches will be available? How many established coaches will want to come work for Woody Johnson? Um, yeah, and if you're going that route, if you're cleaning house, who's the new G? I mean, that's what worries me is the new GM. If you're gonna dump Joe Douglas, all right. Um, but I I look at the talent he brought in. Like as I said, I think it's good. We've just seen too many bad ones. I think fans, for whatever reason, a lot of fans really just treat like the draft and player acquisition like you should never have a miss. Like, oh, he missed on this guy and this guy and this guy. Yeah, every GM misses on half their picks. He's gonna have misses. But for whatever reason, when a GM gets to a point where the fans hate him, every single miss is treated like it's, I've seen people complain about like fifth rounders. Oh my god, he missed on this guy. Yeah, fifth round pick. 90% of them are misses. Like what are you doing here? Um, Randy, what do us fans look forward to now? Um, Good question, Randy. Um, I mean, at this point, it's always just, I guess, young players developing, hopefully developing. Rodgers, you gotta wonder, is he back next year? I mean, we've already had that conversation when a couple weeks ago when he was getting hit 20 times a game. It was kind of like, all right, I don't think that guy's coming back. Um, let's say they win a few more games. I mean, I think they will because of the weak schedule. I think they'll win enough games to be sort of a middle of the pack draft wise. Not good enough for the playoffs, but not in position to draft a franchise quarterback. Lucy says we can win 8 to 10 games. 2 tough games left. I get the optimism, Lucy. Like I said, I said go out and run the table. With really, this was the only game that worried me. I thought, well, run the table, kind of being a little bit silly, but deep down, I thought if you beat Pittsburgh, you can, and if you don't, you could go on a run after that. It's tough. It's just tough after a 37-15 loss to sit there and go, all right, now they're going to reel off 8, 9 in a row. Are there 9 left? How many games are left? 3 and 5, 2 and 5, 10 games left. Um, yeah, it's difficult to envision a team that just lost 37-15 going out and winning a bunch of games. But I mean, they finally played a fairly clean. I mean, they had some penalties, but they didn't have as much as they have recently. Has the defense come out flat? I don't think so. I don't think they've come out flat. I think they're just not that strong up the middle, and teams are taking advantage of it, and that's always going to look bad. Randy says no run game. Have to have a run game. Yeah, a run game or some. I mean, if you could do what you did tonight with with Brees with the short passes, like I remember used to watch a lot of Eagles because I was actually that was even before Philly, but I always liked Andy Reid. Um, and I feel like when he had Donovan McNabb, they didn't run the ball a lot. They just used the short passing game substituted for it. And if you can do that, like something that gains you chunks of yards that keeps the clock running. But I get the sentiment though, Randy. I understand what you're saying. I don't want to get sidetracked with schematics and differences in philosophies and all that. Sauce can't tackle, never looks for the ball. I mentioned that a couple weeks ago, Stanley. None of their corners do. And I think, like I said, some coaches just teach, watch the other receiver, watch his eyes, watch his hands. You see his eyes light up, get ready and get ready to swat the ball out of his hands. And it must just be with the Jets coach because none of the DBs do it. None of the DBs look to try to find the ball. Um, let's see. Wait, did you say Garrett Wilson pass? He dropped, hit him in the chest. Yeah, it hit him it hit him in his right shoulder. He turned toward the ball hit him in the shoulder, and it popped up, and the DB caught it. Um, so that was it wasn't Rodgers' fault. It was Garrett Wilson's fault. Garrett Wilson should keep his mouth shut. Still doesn't run correct routes and drops TDs. Tough couple of weeks for Garrett Wilson. No doubt about that. Hire Ben Johnson. I think the Jets would love to do that. And while Woody Johnson isn't cheap, and we've talked about this, if you look at the money he has spent since taking over, he's one of the top spenders in the NFL. Don't anyone talk to me about Woody being cheap because he's not. But the rumors last year were that Ben Johnson wants like 14, 15 million a year. I think that's a lot for a guy who hasn't proven it. But listen, Woody might be desperate enough to do it. Roger says Nick Mangold for next head coach. I would like to see him get a job coaching with the organization. I'm not going to just slide him right into head coach. Joe D is 29-61. The way I always look at that, James, is if I build you a sweet car and you crash it into a wall, is it my fault? Like, Joe Douglas, as everyone knows, inherited what may have been the worst roster in the NFL. It was always going to be a few years till they were good. It looked like they were going to be good at year 4, then the Rodgers injury, and now this year. Again, I'm not going to come off the line that they have talent. They've got a lot of talent. They're just not putting it together. But again, you want to fire Joe Douglas, fine. He'll have a job in short order. He'll have an NFL job, and he'll be fine. And maybe he should move on. Maybe he should be like, you know what? I think I'm going to go, Woody. We don't need to discuss a contract extension. Yeah, Garrett, false starts, drop passes, not good. Play Taylor at quarterback, let Rodgers retire. Yeah, that's not going to happen. I mean, Jesus, the cap hit. I think you'd have to just cut everybody to accelerate Rodgers' cap hit if you were to cut him or retire or whatever this year. Imagine being Reddick's new agent, saying you're an idiot, go to work Monday, and then getting 1.5 agent fee. Well, I mean, Hassan Reddick. Gee, good thing they got him done. I mean, should have just let him stay home and maybe save some of that money for if it doesn't get spent on him, you carry it over. Or it was a real weird situation. Like no one seemed to know the answers to whether or not he was going to be with the team next year. Not with the team, but under contract. If the contract would toll, there was a lot of questions with that. No one really seemed to have the answers. I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, says Keegren. I do, and it's a train, and it's coming, and it has been for years though. There isn't. This was supposed to be a much better season than it has been. And yeah, light at the end of the tunnel. No, it's reset button. After this season, more likely than not, and then that means new GM, new head coach. Finding out if the new GM knows how to acquire talent. You might get the next great GM, and you might get the next John Idzik, but you'll need a few years to find out. So, yeah, so that's that. Stanley says can't blame Reddick for not wanting to play here. Yeah, still, you could. I mean, listen, we've all had jobs we don't want to work at, but we show up. Reddick cost himself a lot of money. That was dumb. Scott says I don't know how to fix this team. So much talent, we're downright bad. Wholly agree, Scott. I mean, what do you do? Do you hire a new GM and does he just say, "Well, I want to make my own moves," and do you just trade Sauce, Garrett, Reese, get yourself a bunch of first rounders, and start over with early picks and with low cap numbers? Maybe you do. Maybe you do. Listen, if you, I know if you live in the New York, New Jersey area and you're able to go to games and meet up with your fellow Jets fans and tailgate and have a good time before the game, because the games we know are not fun, do it. Get something out of this because the team performing well is not something you're going to get to see. Yeah. Dark cloud hanging over the team. It feels that way, doesn't it? Let's see. My brother was an Eagles fan. Loved Roman Gabriel from Roger. Roger also says Douglas has a job at ESPN. No, Douglas, the Eagles might bring him back. I think he was pretty close with Howie. He could land in Philly again. Douglas will get a job with no problem. They could have an all-star team and be the same story, says my info. I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I mean, how many we've talked about it, right? Even if it doesn't, if you don't want to do the fan homer thing, sort of overrating players or whatever you want to call it. What was it? 6 guys on the NFL top 100. Daniel Jeremiah did an offseason thing where he counted how many teams had like legit, no joke, blue chip players to build around. I think he had the Jets with 5, which was second or third in the NFL. So there's, again, tired of saying it, but there's talent. Says fire everyone. Send Rodgers to the Shanghai Sharks. Is that a real team? Reddick turned down Kamala Harris campaign director. I'm not sure what that means. No question about it. Trade Sauce and Garrett, along with the other guys, get picks, new GM, new coaching staff. That might be the route they choose. That might be the way they choose. Send Woody to Vietnam. Unlikely. Oh, ambassador type thing. Is that what you mean? If yeah, we're not going to get into politics. Sauce, Garrett, and other guys have clearly checked out. I mean, Garrett had 100 yards, didn't he? Or he may not have had 100, but he had a decent day. I thought he had more than that, 5 for 61. But I mean, you saw him make it after the drop. He had a nice catch and run. It's not that he's not playing hard. He's making mistakes, which is killing him. Scott says maybe trading Sauce, Garrett, and Brees may be the best way to rebuild. It might be, and the new GM might feel that way. We'll see. Lions, Texans, and many other teams turned it around in 1 to 2 years. Yeah, that's the thing. I would be willing to bet if we went and looked at those rosters 1 through 53, those teams probably had more to start with, to work with. And the Texans the Texans got that insane trade package for Deshaun Watson, and then further trades with what was it, the Panthers with that. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to look and see how many top sort of 15, 20 picks the Lions have had or the Texans have had in the last 3-4 years. I'd kill for a CJ Stroud type of QB. Look, we all would at this point. I'm on record as a huge Cam Ward fan. We talked about him on the show the other day. I have tweets from him from probably 2 years ago, when he was at Washington State saying like this is but he's not going to be there when the Jets pick. The Jets will win enough games to not be in the Cam Ward conversation. So that will leave them, without an answer at quarterback again. And again, I like Jordan Travis, but we've not seen him. Maybe. Well, I'm not going to get into that either. Not to say about do we see Jordan Travis this year. Lecky Fotu has been pretty invisible since he came back. By the way, 0 tackles, 2 assists. Still got run on up the middle. He was a guy I had a lot of questions about after the signing. After watching film on him, I thought I don't see it, but I gave the Jets D-line coaches the benefit of the doubt because they have developed a lot of guys. But that, yeah. Is it time to panic and tank? Monkey Fungal says, no, only because players don't tank, organizations do. Joe Douglas, hang on 1 second. Our good friend, Mr. Christopher Schubert, would like to join in. I am going to send him the join me link, and I might just let Chris vent for as long as he likes, because why the hell not? Give me 1 second here, Chris. Oh, here we go. I didn't see that. I didn't have that open. There we go. So joining me now, or shortly, momentarily, within seconds, will be our good friend Chris Schubert. And here he is. Go ahead.
I mean, what can you say? I mean, I'm already having a tough night as it is because the Mets got eliminated, and that was not enjoyable. I don't know what else you can say about this franchise. Like, this team is bad. Like, they're a bad football team. I don't care who their quarterback is. I don't care that they traded for Devontae Adams. I don't care that they have Garrett Wilson. I don't care. They are a bad football team. At some point, the talent you have on paper doesn't matter, and I have to look at the results. They are a 2-5 football team that has very clearly played themselves out of being relevant in 2024. So they're done. They're toast. I saw Connor Hughes trying to paint the rosy picture of, well, you have to win the next 2. Great. We said that about this game. We said that they couldn't lose this game to the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. We said this about the Monday night game after they fired Robert Saleh, that they couldn't lose that game. And guess what? They lost both of those games. Aaron Rodgers is talking about how there's no energy on the team, and there wasn't any energy on the team pregame. There was no energy on the team at halftime when they went. This team is cooked. They are cooked. They have a quarterback who's making terrible mistakes at 40 years old. They have an offensive line that is getting hurt. And I said this to you guys in the DM, and I don't know if you shared it here on the show. But this is a team that is now paying the price for wasting 2 years of elite defensive performance where they were healthy and not getting banged up. And they are now paying the price in 2024 because they're having injuries all over the place and they're not going to be able to overcome those. They are not going to be able to score enough points on offense to overcome what the defense has become. So this team's cooked. We can start talking. We can start looking at prospects, and because I'm not even worried about getting old takes exposed on this. This team is done. They fired their head coach. They changed offensive play callers. They're 2-5. You tell me a team that has ever gotten out of that hole. It's not. This team is over, done.
Yeah, two things you said there that I've touched on since kicking off. One was and I explained how, with my son being as young as he is and explaining football to him, I had that conversation with him this offseason as he's learning, and I was telling him, on paper, the Jets are really good, but if you don't produce on the field, nobody cares, and it doesn't matter. So you can have talent, but if the talent isn't producing, then no one cares what you look like on paper. And yeah, I think I kicked off the show by saying it's time to start talking more draft on the Jet Nation Live podcast. Of course, we'll still cover the team, but maybe take bigger chunks of time to talk about prospects, because who will the Jets draft next, and who will be drafting them?
I think it's very easy to look at what has happened over the last 4 weeks, right? The last 3 weeks, you got the ball into the hands of the quarterback that's supposed to be your savior, and he failed. Tonight, that same quarterback didn't fail you in the fourth quarter. He just failed you all 4 quarters. Like those interceptions. Now, the one that Garrett gets hit in the hands, like that's not on Aaron.
Yeah, that's not wrong.
The first one that completely changed the momentum of the game is absolutely on Aaron. And he also was bad. There were a couple of passes. Now, mind you, I had the Met game on while I was watching the Jet game, so maybe I didn't see these as clear as day, and you'll correct me, Glenn. But there were a couple of passes that he threw to Brees out of the backfield where he just missed Brees by 3 yards. Like they weren't even competitive. He didn't even give Brees a chance to catch these passes. And so I don't know. In football, everything starts with the quarterback. And if you don't believe in what the quarterback is able to give you, you don't stand a chance. Didn't we do this for 3+ years with Zach? Like we did this. We didn't believe in the quarterback, so the results were never going to come. I'm now at a point in this current moment, I don't believe the quarterback can get it done anymore. I just don't.
Yeah, if you look, Chris, I made the point that a lot of, his total yardage numbers have looked decent the last couple of weeks. Brees Hall had 90 yards after the catch on quick little, shovel passes and screens. And then, of course, last week he had the 50-yard Hail Mary that Lazard pulled down. So it's not like he's, picking defenses apart and throwing for 280, 285, whatever it is. He's getting a lot of help from his teammates to get there. He's not the box score looks better than the reality. And that's not a good thing, obviously.
I was told Devontae Adams made everything better. I was told everything was going to work perfectly.
I don't think he had a target in the second half. And
Hassan Reddick's coming back though, Glenn. That's okay. Everything's solved.
Well, there we go.
Everything's solved.
Just in time.
I'm sorry, but if you continue to believe that this team is going to turn it around, then you're watching a different version of football than I'm watching.
If they had even been competitive tonight, I could have convinced myself that, all right, they can go on a run. But they're just not even competitive.
Glenn, they were up 15-6 in this game. They lost 37-15.
Yes.
They gave up 31 unanswered points.
Yep.
And I said this. I think I said it on the air, but I know I definitely said it off the air, so you'll remember it if it was an off-air conversation. But this team doesn't get to use excuses. They don't get to use injuries as an excuse.
No.
They don't. They have to come through. They have to perform. Because if you want to have excuses for losing 37-15 and being 2-5, then it's over. Right? They didn't score a single point the entire second half. They have they're supposed to have Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Zach Wilson have better halves than that.
And you heard, listen, we've said it, and you heard the broadcast saying it. Defenses are going to have a hard time dealing with this. You got Garrett Wilson on one side, Devontae Adams on the other. You've got Brees Hall in the middle, who's going to be able to pick up these yards after the catch, and so many options. And Conklin's a solid tight end. And that lasted all of 2 or 3 drives, and then they were shut down the rest of the way. I think there are other quarterbacks who would get more out of this offense.
I think Zach Wilson's had better performing halves than Aaron Rodgers. If this is the quarterback play they're going to get, they will be picking in the top 10 of the draft. It's that simple. If this is the quarterback play they're going to get boat raced by the Texans in 2 weeks. Boat raced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, luckily they get the pick. So listen, I
feel like there are enough soft teams on their schedule that they won't be top 10, but
right.
maybe they will.
I have tickets to the game on the 10th against the Cardinals. My dad lives on the East Coast, flying all the way to Arizona to watch this team play.
Ooh.
To watch this, I'm now going to take time out of my day and go to this dumpster fire to watch this team play. Yeah. And at that point, they could be 3-6 at that point. So I'm going to be watching a 3-6 football team try to embarrass themselves against the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
because here's the thing. Here's the thing, Glenn. We can talk about how they have a soft schedule, right? The two teams they've beaten are rookie head coaches. That's it. Mm-hmm. Even after making the coaching change. Does everybody understand why Mike Tomlin is viewed as a good coach? He made a quarterback change in the middle of the week after they're 4-2. And throughout the first quarter and a half of this game, it looked like it was a mess. And now he looks like a genius because they won 37-15. And now that team is just, the momentum for that team is just leaving the station. Where the Jets can't get out of their own way. They've lost 4 in a row.
What are your thoughts, Chris? I touched on this because someone mentioned it in the chat. I wasn't going to mention it because I mentioned a similar thing earlier. It's not related so much to football. But when you did you watch the closing seconds, the final seconds?
I did not. What occurred?
Again, it bothers me probably more than it bothers most. But as the final seconds were winding off the clock and players were coming to the middle of the field, Breece Hall could not have been wearing a bigger smile. Like he was the happiest man on earth. Probably I imagine he was reuniting with a friend he hadn't seen from some time. Blah 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 blah. But it really, and the point I made, and I said this earlier because my point yesterday was Javon Kinlaw last week when he was seen laughing and smiling on the sidelines seconds after committing a penalty that may have cost them the game. And it does remind me, like, hey man, I gotta stop taking this so seriously. Like, if these guys don't care enough to get mad for 5 seconds, why am I why am I losing sleep over a football team where the millionaires on the team are like, whatever?
I agree with the second part of your statement. Listen, guys are going to do what they're going to do post game. I would rather see you be really angry that you just lost a game that you should have won. Like I would rather, because I'm just an old school guy like that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, if these guys aren't going to turn it around, if they're not going to show the better effort, if there's not going to be accountability, if there's not going to be the necessary adjustments. Now they were better with the penalties tonight. They didn't completely destroy themselves with the penalty, so I have to give them that. But
I mentioned that earlier.
This will be my last thought because I actually have to get to bed. I've done like 4 pieces of content in the last 45 minutes. My brain's scrambled now. The last 4 weeks have given me data point after data point after data point to tell me that this team is going nowhere with this quarterback. Not to say he can't look good in moments, not to say he can't win football games for the New York Jets. With what he was brought in here supposedly to do, I have enough data points over a decent enough sample size of 7 games overall, but in particular the last 4, to tell me they are never going to achieve those goals with him. And that is how I will leave you, Glenn, and I will see you on the Thursday edition of the show.
All right. Have a good one. That is one Chris Schubert. I knew he wouldn't be happy. Why should he be? Why should any Jets fan be happy right now? They're 2-5. Season's over. Focus on the draft. And we'll talk more about this tomorrow because maybe, it's always sometimes you need to sleep on it for a little bit and settle down. I'm not going back tomorrow and say this team's gonna be fine. Not at all. But we'll talk again tomorrow. Jets embarrassed themselves in Pittsburgh, 37-15 loss, non-competitive in the second half. Devontae Adams, invisible in the second half. Aaron Rodgers, killer interception. Rex Ryan said before the game, and I posted, I did a quick blog post on it on jetnation.com. Sorry, again, what are we at now? 5:45 in the morning. Jesus Christ. Rex Ryan said before the game, Aaron Rodgers has had one good game this year. Why isn't anybody talking about that? And Rex said, I'm keeping it real. I've been around this game a long time. Right now, Aaron Rodgers is a below average quarterback. Agree, disagree. It is what it is. Jets 2-5. Season's over. Play out the string. Blow it all up. Have a good one.